Okay. Will it show here or no? It won't. Okay.
3, 2, 1.
All right, we are live. What's up, guys? So just to let you know what's going on here, obviously you see me talking into the camera. Once again, it's been a long time here on TNC. This is a test run for live TNC. We got all the things set up here. Obviously, I'm not in the studio yet that I'm building at my new house. I'm here in my apartment, as you see, a white wall behind me. But we're just getting things set up, and I want to test out for a few weeks before we, get into the studio. So we are recording this live, but it's going on a private feed, and then we're going to upload it later for you guys to watch. If everything goes right with this test, then starting next week, TNC will be live. We don't have the call-in feature yet, but you guys will be able to chat with me, and then I got a monitor right here. I can see your guys' chat, and we can go back and forth, so we can have a little bit of interaction during TNC every week. More about that to come, but it's going to be 7 to 8 p.m. That's the scheduled time. Sometimes it might go long, but 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be 4 to 5 Pacific time. And so we're live, baby. So cool. This is very, very cool. And check out the gun show. Boom! Ho! Somebody call the police. There's a lot of guns in here. We need some gun control. Okay, I'll stop screwing around. It's just really cool. I'm looking at myself in the monitor here. Okay, anyway, before we get started here, TNC 160. The 160th episode of The Neutral Corner. I'm your host, Michael Montero for BoxingMonthly.com and Boxing Monthly Magazine. And before we get started, I want to wish my friend Nigel Hins happy 40th birthday, brother. He turned 40 years old on February 23rd. He asked me for a birthday shout out. He's in Nottingham, England. Nigel, hope you had a great 40th birthday, my friend. Hopefully you didn't drink too much. Actually, yeah, I hope you drink a lot and had a lot of fun. I'm joining the 40 Club in a few months myself. I can't freaking believe it. If I can ever get my house together. You guys, throughout the show here, you might notice various wounds on my hands from I have one here right in the middle of my hand, like Jesus. So anyway, news and notes. So another thing, guys, just to let you know, if you're watching the video here, the video that we're going to do live on YouTube, you're not going to hear the typical music in the breaks and everything like that. It's just going to go live and we're going to plow straight through, right? The audio podcast, though, we're going to take the audio and load that up to iTunes, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Spotify, all those platforms, and we'll edit it. And there you'll hear the typical podcast. It's going to have, the intro music, and it's going to be broken up into our different sections with the music and all that stuff that you guys are used to. Live video version here on YouTube, just going to go right through. And depending on what happens with the chat, we might break halfway through a segment. I might go to the chat and answer some questions, go back to the segment. We'll just feel it out and see what comes natural, all right? And it's going to be a process, so, bear with me as we go through this. But today, I wanted to, I asked you guys on Twitter for some questions for this episode of TNC, and a few of you sent some. I'm going to get to these real quick, and then we'll get into some news and notes because we got some things to discuss. But Ron Newman asked, thoughts on Money Powell? It's actually Money Powell IV. I know it's early on, but he seems like a solid prospect. So for those of you guys who don't know, Money Powell, prospect out of, I think, Alabama. So Deontay Wilder territory, fought this weekend and scored an impressive knockout. He kind of slipped the shot, pulled back, and threw a short, straight right hand. It was a beautiful knockout. Definitely a good-looking prospect. And had a good, solid amateur career. I think won some junior tournaments and everything like that. A regional amateur career, not really an international one. Very, very early on, though. If you look at the records of the guys he's fought, can't get too excited, but so far he's passed every test with flying colors. Michael Barrios asks, are we going to party in Texas or what? With like 4 T's. What's up, Barrios? Hell yeah, we're going to party, man. I got to do some work, though. For those of you who don't know, what my man Barrios is talking about here is Spence Garcia. Tiffany and I are covering that fight for Ring Magazine and for Ring TV, the website. So we're going to be there covering that fight live. That's going to be our first live fight since, I want to say Garcia Easter, or maybe it was the Canelo Golovkin rematch. I don't know, but yeah, man, we'll definitely, I got to get some work done, baby. But after work time, it's party time. Yeah, Herrera asks, I know you might have it already on schedule, but I want to hear your thoughts on the Castaño-Lara bout. Brian might be a paper champion, apparently, but check his amateur record and wins. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that later in the episode in the preview section. We're going to find out. We're going to get some questions answered with that kid this weekend. But, man, you look at that record, paper thin. So we'll talk more about that later. RTS Mighty Mike asks, hey, brother, what's your take on why Miller Joshua need 3 months to train? I mean, it isn't like they're cutting weight or anything. I hate these months-long build-ups, especially for heavyweight. Mighty Mike, a lot of that has to do with, look, regardless of what they say about we need time for this or time for that, it comes down to dates, venues. And, with the zone, you're not really fighting for dates, but with the venue, you are fighting for dates. So originally, Joshua was going to fight in April. Now it's May. Now it's June. Things got pushed back, but you have to look at where they're fighting, the schedule in New York, and everything else. As far as 3 months of training, I think 3 months of training is a good camp. Some guys like to do like 8-9 weeks of training camp. I think, especially for a guy like Joshua, Miller is honestly more experienced. He did so much sparring with the Klitschko's, but for a guy like Joshua, a good solid 3-month camp to prepare for an opponent, I like that, especially because the first, quarter to a third of camp, you're not sparring or anything. You're just getting in shape. You're working on a few things. And then, so there's different phases of camp. So a 3-month camp, I like it. I hear you. It sucks that we have to wait till June to see Anthony Joshua, the premier heavyweight fight. That sucks, but it is what it is. I mean, I've talked about that fight in the past with Joshua and Miller in past episodes of TNC where a lot of that came down to the executives at DAZN pushing for AJ to come over to the States. And the best way for him to make his USA debut is against Miller, New York guy in New York, and all that comes down to scheduling, man. So it just is what it is. Ringside Reporter asks, love you guys at Ringside Reporter. That's one of the few shows I watch and listen to. Do you think Dirrell or his corner gamed the open scoring system and, for lack of a better term, quit the fight to get a decision? So you guys obviously are talking about the Anthony Dirrell Avni Yildirim fight of this past weekend, and I'll talk more about that in the review section. But I don't think Dirrell gamed the system in any way. I think that that fight had open scoring, so they knew they were ahead on the cards. They knew that it was favorable if the fight got stopped, but it's not as if the ring corners and the ring doctors in their corner are part of their team. So I don't see how you could say Dirrell gamed the system. They knew if the fight got stopped, they'd win. So in that respect, it was an advantage for them. And in the back of your head, if you're a fighter, if you're Anthony Dirrell and you got a bad cut, and maybe you could milk it a little bit to the ref, but I don't see how that's gaming the system in any way. It's not like he kept going to the ref saying, I can't see, or whatever. He wanted to fight. It was really, really abrupt. There was another headbutt. The ref pulled him over or brought the ring doctor over to look at it. But I didn't see Anthony Dirrell really milking it to the ref or, trying to, kept touching his eye or saying, I can't see or anything. He wasn't complaining at all. And that's why at first I bitched about the stoppage on Twitter. I've since changed my opinion. I'll talk more about that later. But no, I don't think he gamed the system. I just don't like open scoring. It takes away... It gives the guy who's ahead too many advantages, and it takes away the suspense for the fans. And if you're a guy who knows you're way behind on the cards and there's no damn way you can win, I think that affects your psychology and how you fight. I just don't like it. Never been a fan of it. Paul asked, do you see Lomachenko moving up another weight class or stays where he's at? Paul, I mean, honestly, truthfully, Vasily Lomachenko could make not just 130, but he could make 126 right now if he really wanted to. He really, really could. 135, I really think, is going to be his limit as far as his maximum effectiveness. Actually, he's probably 130 is his best weight, 126 to 130. I think at some point he's going to go to 140 because there's going to be a big money fight for him there. And I honestly, I could see Lomachenko eventually getting knocked out And I don't think it's going to be because he's fighting a guy who's so much better than him. I just think it's going to happen at some point. He's going to be old. He's going to get caught slipping. He does make mistakes. He is human. Probably at 140 he's going to get knocked out. If there is some sort of catchweight fight in the welterweight division for huge money, maybe at some point he takes that, but I think he's going to be at 135 for a while. Anything above 135, it's going to have to be a big money, one-off kind of fight. Let's see. Fernando asks, it's looking like Canelo is lined up for 3 Triple G fights and with Danny Jacobs mixed in. Any thoughts on that run of fights? Look, Fernando, a lot of people bash Canelo Alvarez for a lot of different reasons. One thing you can't say, whether you feel he won all the fights or lost them or whatever, he's fought a lot of good fighters. He fought Floyd Mayweather years before he was ready. He was really still a glorified prospect / junior contender at that point. Guys, I know he had titles, but he had fought Austin Trout. That was the only good fighter he had faced before fighting Floyd, and he barely beat Trout. But Austin Trout's another good name. Irizlandi Lara. And of course, the Golovkin fights. Now it's Danny Jacobs. He's going to have a 3rd fight with Golovkin this fall. I'll talk more about that in a minute. So that's a good run of fights. And there are very, very few fighters in the last 5 years or so who can compete with that sort of schedule and the quality of opponents. Now, the controversy is a lot of those fights, people feel that he didn't win. And not just crazy wacko haters on Twitter or whatever, but actual astute, knowledgeable boxing writers and historians feel he lost several of those fights, including, of course, that first Golovkin fight. And there's a lot of people who feel he lost the second fight. He's Golden Boy Promotions, Golden Goose. Golden Boy Promotions owns Ring Magazine, so a lot of people feel that some people at Ring Magazine are too favorable to Canelo. And look, I understand all that criticism, okay, but the dude has fought some of the best fighters. My criticism is, in between those great matchups, he takes soft touches. I don't mind soft touches. I mind charging $80 for a pay-per-view and $20,000 for ringside seats to fight Amir Khan, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., guys like that. And by the way, Ring Magazine, before I forget, you guys haven't got the latest issue here of Ring. Spence Garcia will be at that fight, but you might see down here, Devin Haney, a mention of Devin Haney. That's a mention to my latest piece in there. Look at that. So I did an article on Devin Haney, spoke with him and his trainer recently. Super good guy, super smart, super ahead of the game for his age. Hasn't fought any world beaters yet or anything like that, but Devin Haney is, 20 years old? He's really on the right track. Do I necessarily see a future all-time great or anything in Devin Haney? No, but I do see a future attraction. I really, really do. So anyway, check out my latest piece in Ring Magazine. Okay, back to these questions. Books Annalise asks, hi, bro, what does equity in DAZN mean for Triple G Boxing and Triple G Promotions? Okay, so you're asking about what's been reported on Ring Magazine by a certain reporter who likes to kind of jump the gun on these stories and get it out there before anybody else, right? Triple G is very, very close to signing with DAZN, but I wouldn't feel comfortable yet reporting on it as a done deal. It's not. And I know it's very, very close, but look, we just had Wilder Fury that was really, really close for May, and it was so close, I felt comfortable reporting on it, and then boom, Tyson Fury hit us out of left field with that deal with ESPN. The Wilder Fury rematch, it's still going to happen, but now it's way pushed back, right? So with Golovkin, I'm not ready to speak just yet, but the deal apparently is going to be a multi-fight deal, and what Gennady Golovkin is, guys, I'll say this much, okay? Triple G he always wanted to go to DAZN because obviously the biggest fights for him are at DAZN. You've obviously got the third fight with Canelo, but you've got other middleweights there. Eddie Hearn has the deal with DAZN, and he's got guys at 160. He's got guys at 168 like Callum Smith. Golovkin can move up, fight Callum Smith in the UK. That's a big fight over there. He's already fought in the UK. So there's a lot of different possibilities. It's not just that big, huge payday with Canelo, it's all these other, the second tier fights are good too. PBC was probably number 2 in line. Their big fight, though, was with Charlo. Charlo isn't even as profitable as a fight with Billy Joe Saunders would be, or a fight with Callum Smith would be, honestly. I mean, yeah, you could have a fight with Triple G and Charlo here in the USA. It'd be on a big platform. It'd be on Showtime pay-per-view, but that fight ain't going to Fox because both fighters are going to want to get paid, so that's going to go to pay-per-view here. On DAZN, a fight with Callum Smith, that's just on DAZN, so it's better for the fans. But over in the UK, that does big numbers. And then you have all the international money and everything. I think collectively, a fight between Golovkin and Callum Smith probably makes almost, or at least damn close, as much money as a fight between him and Charlo. So PBC, while they could offer a bigger platform, right? Because fighting on Fox, that's a big platform, and they could offer him several 8-figure paydays. It's not going to be collectively as much as he can make over at DAZN. And the same thing with ESPN, which was never really seriously in the running because they just don't have guys for him to fight. Because Gilberto Ramirez, who was once possibly an option, he's moving up to light heavyweight. So he's going to sign with DAZN at some point, but what Golovkin wants is he's already, and this is why he's kind of half retired here, guys. That's the truth. I know you don't want to hear that. He's already thinking about the business side of things. He has a promotional company. He wants to start signing guys from Kazakhstan and building them up. And he wants to do that with whoever he signs with. So with DAZN, and there's one of the key stockholders in DAZN is a Kazakh guy, is a friend of Gennady's from Kazakhstan. So a colleague, I wouldn't even say friend, but colleague. So he's trying to negotiate like, hey man, I want a piece of this. I want to start promoting my guys on here and building my promotional company up on here after I'm done fighting. I want to talk business after boxing. So when you talk about equity, that's what it is. Is it points on fights? If he does promotions on there, is there extra points or something like that? We don't know what any of that looks like, okay? But when you think equity, you think buying in. It's not just, hey, you're paying me to fight, or you're paying me as a promoter if I put fighters on. I want a piece of this shit. I want a piece of this company. I want to be one of the stakeholders, a minority stakeholder, something like that. So Gennady's really thinking, he's trying to play chess here, and business-wise, thinking 10, 20, 30 years down the road. That's the kind of deal he's looking to sign right now. If somebody's going to throw a boatload of money at him, talking to PBC, talking to ESPN, that was just a way to leverage DAZN and get them to up their money. And really, it wasn't even necessarily the money, it was the equity thing. Stock in the company, stuff like that, to get, because at first they balked at that. They said, no, we ain't doing that. Now, since you started to go over to PBC and talk to those guys, they're coming back like, okay, let's talk about this. What if we offer you XYZ? So it's just negotiations, guys, and that's why it's taken so damn long. He's thinking beyond boxing, which tells me he's being very, very smart, and more fighters should be smart like that. But he's thinking about retirement. He's thinking about what's going to happen after he's done fighting, which tells me a few more fights, maybe 3, 4, 5 fights max, and that's it for Gennady Golovkin. Okay, I'm sure we're going to be talking about that a lot more in future episodes. Ken Hennig asks, question, are you in favor of the WBC headbutt rule that penalizes the unaffected boxer 1 point due to an accidental clash of heads where the bout continues? No, Ken, I am not, because not all headbutts are created equal. So the WBC has a rule where if I'm fighting somebody and we accidentally have a clash of heads and one guy gets cut worse than me, I get docked a point because he got cut worse. I think that's stupid. It's an unfair penalty. Accidents happen in boxing. It sucks, but I shouldn't be penalized if we have an accident and one guy gets hurt more than me. I wouldn't want him more penalized if we have an accident and I get more hurt than him. I just think it's a stupid rule because you can't put all accidents and fouls and everything into one little box. You have to treat each case as its own case, All right, one last one here. Books and Elise ask again, how do you rank Anthony, I'm assuming Anthony Dirrell. He has A. Dirrell, Chris Eubank, and Yildirim among the super middleweights. Super middleweight is not a very loaded division. not at all. Dirrell is definitely a top 5 right now. Arum is in the top 10. Eubank, depending on the matchup and everything, he's somewhere in the middle, probably in the top 10, but I don't even know if he's in the top 5 right now. Yildirim might be on the bubble. I think at Ring we were talking this weekend about the ratings, and there was one guy we were going to bump out possibly and bring Yildirim in at 10, but he's right on the cusp. Eubank somewhere between 5 and 10, and Dirrell is now top 5 super middleweight. So that's it for Twitter questions. Okay, let's get into some quick news and notes. As you guys watch me drink my drink here. Okay, so I talked about the Golovkin thing with DAZN. At some point, that's all going to be announced. It's going to come out. I still strongly feel he will. I'm not saying he did. Nothing's official, okay? But they are negotiating that. And you guys know, if you follow me and you listen to the show, I've felt all along Golovkin's going to sign with DAZN. It just makes too much sense. So we'll talk more about that in the future. But between Wilder and Fury, their rematch. You guys already know Fury went with ESPN and everything else. Apparently, Bob Arum has sent an offer to Deontay Wilder's side for the rematch. And I usually don't like talking about this stuff because 9 times out of 10, it's just rumors. It's pure bullshit. It's just people, promoters, fighters, managers using social media, particularly Twitter, to promote their fighters and their events. But this is actually legit. Shelly Finkel, who is one of the 8,000 people managing Deontay Wilder, verified that they got a contract and they're reviewing it. So with the WBC, apparently Mauricio Suleiman said, you guys have until Wednesday night to figure this shit out. So we'll find out this week, okay? If Shelly Finkel balks, if Deontay Wilder's side balks at that deal and they don't like it, then the WBC should get involved by the end of the week, unless Mauricio Suleiman pushes the deadline back again. We'll see. I probably see the WBC having to get involved here to make this fight happen, because now Deontay Wilder is contractually a free agent. He can fight anywhere he wants, but with this big deal Fury just signed and everything, usually when that kind of stuff happens, the sanctioning body has to come in and make a decision. So it would not surprise me if in the end the WBC has to do a ruling and they say something like, you guys each get a tune-up fight this spring, and then in the fall you have to rematch or something like that. We'll see what happens. But World Boxing Super Series semifinals coming together. There's only one fight that isn't announced yet. Junior Dorticos is going to fight Andrew Tabiti in the semifinals, the cruiserweights. That doesn't have a venue or a date or anything yet, but that should be out very, very soon. The other cruiserweight bout between Marius Bradis and Krzysztof Glowacki, that is done for June 15th in Riga, Latvia. You have to favor Bradis in that by decision in Latvia, but I think that's going to be a really, really fun atmosphere. Now we got 2 double headers, which I really, really like. So in Glasgow, Scotland, at 140 pounds, Josh Taylor versus Ivan Branchek. I like that fight, and I like Taylor fighting there in Scotland. And then bantamweights, Naoya Inoue, the monster, fighting Emmanuel Rodriguez. That is going to be May 18th in Glasgow. So look, this year didn't start with a huge bang. We have a lot of action, a lot of fights in the schedule, but no real big fights. But May, shit's going to get cooking. May, June, into the summer, and then into the fall, I think we're really going to have some good stuff. And you just look at what we're getting within the span of about a month or so, from the beginning of May to the beginning of June. Good stuff, man. The other doubleheader, Regis Prograis, this 140 pounds. Regis Prograis versus Carol Relic, and Nonito Donaire, of course, at bantamweight versus Zolani Titi. That's April 27th. They said it's in the United States. They haven't picked a venue yet. The rumor is that it's going to be in Los Angeles. I think that's awesome in Los Angeles. Nonito Donaire is going to bring the Filipino fans out. I think that any good card, the LA fight fans are so knowledgeable, and it's such a great fight scene there. They're going to come out, and they haven't got to see Regis Prograis yet. So I think that would be an awesome card in LA. I really hoping it winds up there. But World Boxing Super Series had some issues with financials. People weren't getting paid. The first round, people got paid, but then there was issues with securing funding because you have to put money down at some of these venues and things like that. I won't get into all the business side of it, but you got to have funding up front to confirm fights and to confirm dates, venues, et cetera, and there was issues securing funding. These semifinal fights were supposed to be scheduled for early this year. That's kind of why the schedule feels a little flat right now. Even though there's a lot of fights happening, they're not all the biggest fights, right? These fights were supposed to basically be happening right now and in March. They're pushed back a few months because of all that funding and everything, but it got taken care of. And basically, April, May, and then June, because I think the Dorticos Tabiti fight will be in June as well. 3 straight months, all the semifinal action is going to get wound up, and then we're going to know who the 2 finalists are in all 3 of the World Boxing Super Series tournaments for Season 2. So it's very, very likely that we should get the finals at the end of this year. So I think that's awesome. I think that really helps the schedule for 2019. I like the World Boxing Super Series. I think they bit off a little more than they could chew this time with 3 tournaments. And that's why they've had trouble securing funding and everything. I think they should keep it to 2 tournaments. I think starting next year, that's what they're going to do, because it's a lot easier to secure funding because you have 4 less fighters, 1 less division and less promoters and everything else to deal with. So that's what they'll do going forward. But okay, guys, that's it for news and notes. We got a lot of stuff to review. Let's get into it. As I have another drink. Now, see, at this time, this is where, normally I'd be going to see some questions and chat with you guys. Okay. Friday, February 22nd, in Ekaterinburg, Russia. I talked about this card a little bit last week. Several Russian prospects, a bunch of them, fought on this card. But there's one I wanted to mention, Evgeny Tishenko, who improved to 4-0. His career is very, very young. He's fought his first few fights were technically at heavyweight. He weighed he's weighed from, I think, 202 pounds to 213 pounds. He was 202 for this fight. It was technically scheduled as a cruiserweight fight. He's trying to work his way down to cruiserweight. But I bring this kid up because he looks really good. He's 6'5". He's a southpaw, 2016 gold medalist for Russia in the 2016 Olympics, 27 years old, very, very experienced and matured in age, a 6'5" cruiserweight. This kid will be ready, mark my freaking words, to fight in the World Boxing Super Series Season 3 tournament if they do cruiserweights again next year. He'll be ready for that tournament. I shit you not. So just wanted to bring him up. Guys, look him up. Look him up and watch some of his stuff on YouTube. Good-looking prospect. Crazy height and length if he can stay at cruiserweight for a while. If he was 202 last week, 27 years old, I think he could fight at cruiserweight for a while. He's got a future in that division. Okay, Saturday we had a bunch of action. Let's start in Tijuana. Why not? Tijuana's a fun place, right? Saturday, February 23rd, a matchroom card. Eddie Hearn in Tijuana. Crazy. Would you have thought that 5 years ago? This was on The Zone, of course, and in the main event, Humberto Soto improved to 69-9-2 with 37 knockouts. He weighed at 146 and some change for this fight, so this is technically a welterweight fight. Scores a unanimous decision win over Brandon Rios, who falls to 35-5-1 with 26 knockouts. He weighed 151 and some change pounds for this fight. The scores felt a bit wide. Soto won 119-111, and 2 judges had it 118-112. And I talked about this on Twitter because some of you were really, really pissed off about the scorecards. You thought it was a closer fight. Guys, I understand that Rios is Mexican-American, but he's American. He's American first, Mexican second. And I know some of you will disagree with me, but it's true. Soto is Mexican. 100% Mexican, and this fight was in Mexico. So I think that maybe he got some favorable judging, but he still won the damn fight. I didn't think the fight was that close, to be honest with you. Some of you guys out there had this a draw. You had, I think a couple of you had Rios winning. The guys, I don't know what the hell you were seeing. I scored this 116 to 112 for Soto. I thought he clearly won 8 rounds in this fight. I gave Rios 4 rounds, and I thought I was being fairly generous. So, the scores were a bit wide, but the right guy won. Look, I take issue with the wide scorecards. I mean, that one judge who literally gave Rios 1 round, and the other 2 gave him 2 rounds, that's a bit too wide, but they weren't that far off from the fight I saw. Anyway, for Rios, who has been slurring his speech now for years, he's got what I call the heavy tongue. That's a term I just use for guys that their tongue is heavy. They don't speak as articulate, as they used to, as articulately, I don't know if that's a word, as they used to, because just the motor skills slow down. And for a guy like Rios, who's in his 30s, I think early, mid-30s, to be slurring his speech and have that heavy tongue already, guys, when this dude's in his 50s, it's going to be hard to understand what he's saying. That's sad. He doesn't need to fight anymore. And for Robert Garcia and all the guys up at that gym who train and work with Rios, shame on them. They need to step in and have a talk with this guy. And I like Robert Garcia a lot, but they need to have a talk with this guy. What the hell, dude? You can't beat Humberto Soto, who hadn't beat a quality fighter in 5 years or so, started his career as a bantamweight, and I get he was a teenager, but he started his career as a bantamweight. Rios is the naturally bigger guy. He's always been a lightweight or bigger. You can't even be that competitive. I mean, he was competitive. This was a fun action fight, but the fight wasn't close in my opinion. Rios needs to walk away. People need to have a serious talk with this guy. I tweeted after this fight, and I'm paraphrasing here, but a lot of you guys responded to my tweet, but I said something to the effect of, when people say boxing has become a gladiator sport, this is the type of fight, Soto Rios, that they are referring to. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the action, but this is the kind of fight they're referring to. So a lot of you enjoyed that tweet and responded, hell yeah, man, this is an awesome fight. These guys are gladiators. I think you misinterpreted what I was saying. Yes, Rios and Soto are gladiators. They deserve credit. Every damn fighter who gets up in the ring deserves credit. Hell, anybody who's done shit at my level and just gotten up in the ring and sparred 100, 200 rounds in their life deserves some credit. Very minuscule compared to a pro fighter, obviously. I'm just saying, it takes some balls. And to do what those guys do takes major balls, right? They deserve tremendous credit for putting on the show they put on. They are gladiators. But what I meant by gladiator sport is that let's really, really talk about what that fight was. And a lot of fights like that are. And some of you ain't going to like what I got to say here. All right? This is why the chat feature that we're going to have soon is going to be awesome. Stuff like this. What the hell is boxing, really? It's rich, bloated millionaires watching poor people beat the shit out of each other. That's what it is. Now, most of us talking here, diehard fans, we ain't rich, bloated motherfuckers, right? We're regular guys. We're knock-around guys from the same types of neighborhoods these fighters are from. But how many of us really, truly wanted to see Brandon Rios take 12 more rounds of punishment? And he took a lot of hard shots from Humberto Soto. I didn't want to see it. I wasn't particularly excited about it. I talked about Omar Figueroa and John Molina a couple weeks ago. That fight was every bit as meaningless as this one. Fun, right? And I think that Soto and Rios, when you look at their careers, much better careers, much more important careers than Figueroa and Molina. And that's why I was more critical of that fight. And that fight was on Fox, like a showcase fight. I think it was on Fox. But did we really need to see these two guys fight? Particularly Brandon Rios. Did we really need to see him fight and take 12 more rounds of punishment like that? That's what I mean by gladiator sport. Go back to the old Roman times, right? My people, right? The history of my people, where they would take slaves in from Rome, from different parts of Europe and Africa, the Middle East, wherever. Slavery in the Roman Empire was not racially based in any way. It was geography-based, class-based. But they would take people from different parts of the world and throw them in the Colosseum and, hey, everyone fight to the death. Rich people, the masses sat in the stands too, but the people that were promoting that, getting rich off it, those people killing each other, were rich people. Boxing, there is an element of that in boxing. I say that as a guy who loves this sport. But sometimes I look at fights like that, and I look at guys fighting on too long, and I look at the corners that work with them and the commissions that clear them to fight in a year where we've already fucking had people die, and I get a little pissed off about it. That's what I mean by gladiator sport. So I know that's going to piss some of you off, and you're going to downvote this video and unfollow me on Twitter and call me all kinds of names, but that's what I meant by that tweet. And I admitted in the same tweet, I'm enjoying it. So there is a bloodthirsty ghoul in me who does enjoy that shit too. Okay, so it's a mixed bag, but that's what I meant by that fight. Also on that card, I talked about this prospect out of Cancun, 25-year-old 2016 Olympian, Josecito Velasquez, improves to 8-0 with 7 knockouts. He's a flyweight, won by TKO 5. I failed to mention last week, though, he fought in the World Series of Boxing from 2013 to 2016. So this kid's got a lot of experience. A lot of people are excited about him. They just need to continue to slowly build him, slowly build this kid up. He's going to be ready to contend very soon. Okay, let's go over to London. O2 Arena, ITV box office in the UK. This was Showtime here in the United States. And Chris Eubank Jr. beats James DeGale. Now, I previewed this fight last week, obviously, and I talked about the fact that, as far as skills and craft and experience, DeGale is light years better than Eubank's ever going to be. Eubank did look improved in this fight. I have to give him credit. But in terms of youth, athleticism, burst and power, explosiveness, Eubank's going to have way more than DeGale ever had. And DeGale's always looked kind of floppy and flimsy to me. And in this fight, he just looked old. It was all he could do to barge in, lunge in, and hold on to Eubank. And Eubank looked frustrated and threw him down a few times. He was docked a point in the 11th round for literally slamming him down into the canvas, right? But scorecards. 115-112, 114-112, way too close. Way too close, way too favorable to DeGale. A third judge had a 117-109. That was the correct score. DeGale was put on his butt in the 2nd and 10th round, and he's just another guy where it's like, dude, if you can't beat this guy who George Groves boxed circles around just, a year ago, you need to retire. James DeGale needs to retire. Why fight on? You just had another headlining fight. You made some money. Walk away, dude. You had a good, solid professional career. Walk away. I hope he does. For Eubank, never going to be an elite fighter. Never going to be an elite level super middleweight, or eventually if he moves up to light heavyweight. But he's a brand. His last name is Eubank. In the UK, that means something. It means a lot among fight fans. So he now has a name on his resume with this clear, decisive victory, really a dominant victory over James DeGale. Yes, it's a faded, shop-worn version of DeGale, but good quality name on his resume now. So that helps build his brand. And he's going to get big fights. And a lot of his bigger fights, probably all of them, he's going to be able to get people to come over to the UK to fight him there, where he will have advantages. So, good for him. He showed improvement in this fight. He's going to be in some bigger fights. He's going to make some more money. He's clearly worked at it and gotten a little more humbled after that fight with Groves, because remember, this dude was training himself, and there was just a lot of arrogance there. So, good for him, but at some point, this guy's going to get exposed again. I don't see an elite fighter in the making. Okay, also on this card, heavyweight action. Joe Joyce scores a TKO 6 win over Berman Stavern. Let's talk about Joe Joyce. He gets a win here over his most experienced opponent to date. Did what he was supposed to do, and I like the fact that he took his time. He didn't just go in there, balls out, and try to get Stavern out of there in 2 rounds. He worked him, and he did loosen up with each round and eventually got him out of there. Joe Joyce is a huge man. Now, Anthony Joshua is big and got guns, and he's a big guy. Deontay Wilder's a big guy. But Joe Joyce just seems to have this massiveness to him. I don't know, man. He maybe it's just because he was next to Stavern. He looks bigger than AJ and Wilder in a certain way, like just a natural. Because you can tell AJ obviously lifts a ton of weights. Wilder lifts weights like a madman. He doesn't do squats, but he lifts a lot of weights. It just looks like Joe Joyce is just like that. Like if he's never picked up a weight in his life, he's just naturally that huge. So there is an advantage to being a massive dude like that. Obviously, you're carrying a lot of weight behind your punch and everything, and he does show some nice improved punch variety. He's been working with Abel Sanchez up in Big Bear and Cali. But this dude is slow. He is this stereotype. When people used to think really big heavyweights, like over 6'4", 6'5", they thought of lumbering, slow, robotic, right? The Klitschko's, especially Vitali, he was criticized and accused of that early on, and I think he proved a lot of people wrong that he wasn't like that. But that's the stereotype, right? Joe Joyce lives up to that. He's not quite as bad as some other guys we've seen, just really slow. And it's not just that his hands move slow, it's that he's very stiff. Everything is rigid and tight. There's no movement in his spine. There's no movement in his shoulders. There's no rolling. There's no head movement. There's nothing. There's none of that. It's just here and punch, punch, punch. And he's so damn big that the punches have massive leverage on them. But if you have an ounce of defensive ability, and if you're in shape and you can time that shit and block it, roll with it, whatever, he's a counterpunch knockout waiting to happen. Now, I say all that, the dude has how many fights so far? I think 7 pro fights or something like that. He deserves time to build himself up. This was for the WBA something or other title, so he's going to eventually be in line to fight for the WBA full version of the heavyweight title. If I'm Abel Sanchez and Team Joyce, I'm slowing that shit down. I'm slowing that down for 2 or 3 years. Seriously. What does Joe Joyce want? Does he want to be the best fighter he can be, or does he want to make a lot of money? If he wants to make a lot of money, go ahead and do the championship fight. See what happens. Throw spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks. If he wants to be the best fighter he can be, take your damn time. Pull an Alexander Povetkin, who wasn't ready for Vladimir Klitschko, and he was originally his mandatory. He was never going to be ready for Vladimir Klitschko because he was just on a different stratosphere of fighter. Povetkin was good, still is a solid top 10 heavyweight, but was never an elite, all-time great level like Klitschko. But it was smart. I think Teddy Atlas was training Povetkin at the time that they pulled out. I think it was the IBF. He was the mandatory for. And they said, we're not ready for Klitschko. And they pulled out. And it was smart. And by the time he finally fought Klitschko, he was as ready as he was ever going to be. If you were Joe Joyce, man, pump the brakes. I don't even think he's ready for a legitimate top 10 guy quite yet. Because Stavern isn't. I don't even know if Stavern's in the top 50 right now, to be honest with you. Just the shape. That guy weighed 273 pounds. I mean, you talk about bitch tits. This guy had back titties. So for Joyce, man, just build it up slow. Work on shit in the gym. And just work on loosening that dude's back. I feel like he needs to have one of those, what kind of massage is that where the girls walk on your back? That's what that dude needs. He needs to break up all that shit back here. He's just way too damn stiff. Also on this card, Lee Selby. He scores a unanimous decision in a 12-rounder. This was his first bout at lightweight. He skipped over 130 pounds. Remember, his last fight his whole career really was at 126. He was a featherweight. This is his return from his first professional loss against Josh Warrington. He skipped 2 weight classes. He jumped up to 135, looked pretty good. He gets a W back in the win column. Okay, one more card to review, guys. Minneapolis Armory, Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is PBC on Fox Sports 1. And after a night of just really what turned out to be kind of one-sided mismatchy kind of fights, even though some of them looked very competitive on paper. All the fights I just talked about, a lot of them ended up being one-sided, all right? This main event on this PBC on Fox Sports 1 card turned out to be a lot of fun and more competitive than a lot of us thought it was going to be. So they kind of won fight of the night, PBC did, man. Anthony Dirrell and Avni Yildirim put on a good show. And it sucks the way the fight ended, but I'm surprised that Yildirim was as competitive as he was. Now, okay, a couple things to talk about. First of all, let's get the basics out of the way. So Dirrell improves to 33-1 with 24 knockouts, wins the vacant WBC super middleweight title. That was the title that David Benavidez had, but he kind of, blew it, if you will. So that's not his title anymore. Dirrell was cut in the 7th round by a headbutt. There was a second headbutt, I think, in the 10th round. The fight doctor stopped it. On the advice of the fight doctor, the fight gets stopped, and they go to the scorecards. They scored the 10th round, which was not completed. 2 judges had it 96-94 for Anthony Dirrell, which is the exact same score I had. 6 rounds to 4 after 10 rounds. And German judge Jürgen Longos scored it 98-92 for Yildirim. That means he scored it 8 rounds to 2 for the Turkish fighter. Now, I looked this guy up. I think he's scored Yildirim's last 3 or 4 fights. Yildirim's Turkish, lives in Turkey and everything, but he fights out of Germany a lot. He's based out of Germany a lot. And his German judge has scored a lot of his fights. Really, this dude needs to be looked into. What fight was he seeing? I did not see Yildirim win this fight. I saw Dirrell clearly win. It was close. I had it even after 8 rounds. But what I saw, guys, was Dirrell by about the 9th and then the 10th round start to kind of find a rhythm in the second half of the fight. Maybe you could make an argument Yildirim was ahead halfway through. You could make that argument. I think I had it even halfway through. But Dirrell found his rhythm and started to, it wasn't coasting, it wasn't easy, and Yildirim was having moments, mostly because Dirrell would have these just lapses in activity and kind of let him in and let him get off. But I thought that he was going to win the 11th and 12th round. That's what I saw. I thought he had kind of found his rhythm and his way, and he was going to win the rest of the rounds and win a 8 rounds to 4 scorecard, 116-112. In my opinion, that's what I saw happening. Now, it's boxing, you never know. Yildirim could have landed a huge shot that changed the fight. You just don't know. I get it. But I think by then, Dirrell, again, in a rhythm, defensively, saw everything coming, and that's why he kind of let the guy get off. It was kind of dumb because he let him score, and they, kind of gave some rounds away. Yildirim did look improved from his blowout loss to Chris Eubank Jr. of all people a while back. But, yeah, Yildirim's still very basic. And another guy who's just really tight. One of the first things, like when I work with somebody and just teach them the little bit I do know about boxing, I'm not saying I'm an expert by any means, but I do have some experience. I see a lot of people just real tight. Their shoulders everything's real tight. When you punch like that, number one, you get injured. But number two, everything, you telegraph everything. First thing I tell dudes is loosen up your shoulders, man. Just loosen up. Yildirim could do a lot better if he'd just loosen up a little bit and flow with his punches. It's like dancing. It should feel like dancing, right? It shouldn't feel so rigid. You're not doing deadlifts, dude. You're not powerlifting. You're dancing. That's what it's supposed to be. So anyway, that's what I saw. So when the fight was stopped in the 10th round, at first, I was like, oh, shit, this cut ain't that bad. I've seen far worse cuts. We just saw Badu Jack fight with blood streaming all over his face. It looked like that movie Carrie, which a lot of you young guys have no idea what I'm talking about. But you might know the remake, which was horrible. But, we've seen way worse cuts, and the fight continued, at least for a round, where the ref or the ring doctor would say, dude, you got 1 round. I'm giving you 1 round. The next big punch that lands on there, you're done. I've seen refs do that. I've seen fight doctors do that. It just looked like immediately like, no, that's it. So at first I bitched on Twitter, but then I saw some of the photos from some of the, I don't trust just shit on Twitter or whatever. actual photos from the press releases that came out from ringside photographers, that are literally right on the ring shooting up at the cut. And it was bad. It was a really nasty gash. I saw him getting stitches. I saw a video of Dirrell getting stitches. It was a bad cut. And the fight being stopped when it was, I'm cool with it. Now, I told you guys before, I didn't like the open scoring. Dirrell and his team knew if the fight was stopped, they had the fight in the bag. Maybe that's why he did kind of lay off a couple times later in the fight and just kind of lay on the ropes and let Yildirim punch and score points at different points because he knew he was ahead. But do I think they gamed the system, or this was some master power play, some mental Jedi mind trick to get the ring doctor to stop the fight? No, he had a really shitty cut. So it is what it is, and sometimes your gut reaction is, oh shit, man, this was a good fight. This is the best fight of the night. Why are you stopping it? Then you start to look and you just do 5 minutes of research. You calm down. You see all the photos and videos coming in, and then you realize, yeah, that was a good stoppage. Now, real quick, let's talk about the Dirrell brothers. I just wanted to mention this, and I talked about this on Twitter too. Andre Dirrell was always seen as the better of the Dirrell brothers, and he's the more athletic guy, the naturally more gifted guy, the more powerful puncher. But it's Anthony who has carved out a better career. He is now a 2-time WBC super middleweight world champion. Now, you look at who he beat to win those titles. It wasn't Murderer's Row. I think he beat Saki Obika the first time. I talked about that last week. I was at that fight. It was awful. One of the worst title fights I've ever seen. And then he beat Yildirim in a very good fight, a fun fight. Not great, but a good, solid scrap that ended strangely. Every Dirrell fight has to end strange. There has to be some kind of controversy, right, with the Dirrell brothers. But technically speaking, a 2-time world titleist, Andre never held more than an interim version of a title. You can make an argument that he should have got the decision over Carl Froch when they fought for a version of the title back in a World Boxing Super Series. No, wait. Am I mixing up my tournaments? You guys know what I'm talking. The 168-pound tournament Showtime did. I can't think. The name escapes me right now. But a lot of people felt he won that fight. I felt he gave that fight away. I felt he played it too damn safe, and that's the way Andre's whole career was. He had bad luck against Arthur Abraham, who he dominated. Arthur Abraham took a cheap shot that did affect his health. So it's unfair to just bash Andre. But I think Anthony Dirrell has carved out a better career, and good for him. Is a guy that was seen as an afterthought. You know what I'm saying? It's like you look at the Cotto brothers. Miguel is the real one, right? You look at the Canelo brothers, the Alvarez brothers. Canelo's the real one. All the other brothers are afterthoughts. That's how a lot of people saw Anthony Dirrell. And he's carved out this career now where he's got a couple world titles. It's very possible he's going to unify with, I believe, the IBF titleist Caleb Plant, who was doing some guest commentary on this card late this year. If PBC was smart, they'd have a unification between Dirrell and Plant in Nashville, Tennessee. No Barclays, no Vegas, Nashville, Tennessee. That's where that fight needs to go. Or Flint, Michigan, but I think Nashville would be a better choice. Better market, and they're hungry for boxing there. I talk to people. A lot of you, there's some of you guys who on Twitter who follow me are in Nashville, and you have gyms, and you talk about this stuff. I think a Plant Dirrell unification, it's a good fun fight, good interesting style matchup. In Nashville, it makes sense. So I think Dirrell's going to lose that fight. I think Plant's going to beat him, I think fairly decisively, but he's going to get paid well. Good for him, man. All right, guys, that is it for the review. Let's preview what we got coming up this week. All right. Tuesday, February 26th in Tokyo, Watanabe Promotions has a 105-pound title fight. Vic Celudar of the Philippines defending his WBO strawweight title for the first time against Japanese fighter Masataka Taniguchi. I love those Japanese names. They're just fun to say. But Tuesday night action over in Japan. So if you can find a stream of that, check it out. Those Japanese cards are always fun, man. And then we got some fights on Thursday. In Washington State, Roy Jones Jr. Promotions. This is on UFC Fight Pass. Guys, I have no idea what the hell UFC Fight Pass is. If any of you know, please let me know, because I have no idea what the hell that is. But Dallas prospect, featherweight prospect, Ray Jimenez Jr., who's 18-1, going up against Mexican fighter Luis Alberto Lopez, who is making his first fight outside of Mexico. You usually know what that means. So that's a 10-round featherweight fight on UFC Fight Pass. And then Friday, we have a bunch of action as well. The Telemundo card in Hollywood, Florida. Mexican bantamweight prospect Ricardo Espinoza Franco and Puerto Rican welterweight prospect Derek Cuevas. They both headline in 10-rounders on that card. In Thailand, we have another 105-pound title fight. Wanhang Manyalothin, or TBE, who's 52-0 with 18 knockouts, the best fighter ever, better than Floyd Mayweather, better than Rocky Marciano, better than Sven Ocht, better than Joe Calzaghe, better than all of them. Going up against Tatsuya Fukuhara out of Japan, obviously, who is 21-6-6. Now, compared to Manyalothin's last few opponents, this Fukuhara guy looks pretty legit because he has a winning record. I looked into his record. The shit I took this morning with my morning coffee is probably more worthwhile than this guy's record. So obviously, TBE is going to get win number 53 in this fight. This will be the 11th defense of his WBC minimum weight title, strawweight title, whatever the hell you want to call it, oxygen weight title. So these two already fought in November of 2017. Manyalothin won clearly. There is zero reason for a rematch. They both have extremely padded records. Why does the WBC allow this to happen? Because money. They're getting that Thailand sanctioning fee money. And TBE is going to get number 53 on Friday. All right, Saturday. Over in Germany, I believe it's in Germany. Undefeated German heavyweight Ajit Kabayel, who is 18-0 with 13 knockouts, 6'3", usually weighs in the mid 230s, upper 230s. Former kickboxer that is getting some attention. Anytime you have a heavyweight undefeated coming up, gonna get attention. Going up against Ukrainian veteran Andrei Rudenko. So this is going to be the biggest test of his young career. It'll be very, very interesting to see what he can do against the Ukrainian guy who's been in there with some good fighters, knows how to handle himself. So if this dude has anything legit to him, he should beat this guy. We'll see. In Peterborough, England, on DAZN, a UK featherweight prospect, Jordan Gill, who is 22-0. He's headlining for the first time. So there's a little bit of pressure on him. He's headlining for the first time on a card like this. A good-looking prospect. And a bunch of other prospects on that card. This is one of those cards, kind of like that Russian card I talked about last week, where you just got a bunch of young guys fighting, staying busy. Maybe they got 5 fights, 8 fights, something like that. Now this kid, Gill, 22-0. So, he's getting ready to contend pretty soon. But DAZN, you get to see all those fights. You can see some of these young guys. You can judge for yourself how ready they are, if they're possible contenders or pretenders. At Barclays in Brooklyn on Showtime, there's a card from DeBella Entertainment and TGB Promotions. And in the main event, this is what one of you guys was asking me about on Twitter earlier. Brian Carlos Castaño, 15-0 out of Argentina, going up against Irislandi Lara in the main event. This will be the second defense of his WBA junior middleweight title. Now, if you haven't heard of Castaño, don't feel bad. I didn't even know this guy had a title. I had heard of him, but I didn't even know he had a damn title. And this will be the second defense, so he's already defended it. You look at this guy's record and who he fought, holy shit. It makes Manyalothin's resume look impressive. Of course, Lara is coming off that loss to Jarrett Hurd last April, so he's been out almost a year. Normally, I don't like that, but that's kind of the way PBC goes most of the time. And for Lara, older guy, that was a tough fight where he took a lot of punches from a much bigger, younger, physical fighter in Hurd. I like the layoff. I like 10 months or so out of the ring. I think it's going to help him in this fight. Castano beat French fighter Cedric Vitou for the full version of the title. I have no idea who the hell that is. If you haven't heard of him, don't feel bad because I don't know who he is either. That's who he beat to win this WBA title. Now, I just kind of bashed the WBC a little bit, but let me be clear about it. The WBC is like amazing compared to the WBA. The WBA is absolute dog shit. And what I just said kind of proves it, right? So anyway, Castano making a big leap in opposition in regards to his professional career. We'll find out what he's made of. Because Irizlandi Lara was competitive against Jarrett Hurd, who is the best 154-pounder on the planet. I don't care what the fuck Mike Coppinger says. And Jarrett Hurd would beat most 160-pounders on the planet. Maybe even some 168-pounders, all in the top 10. And for Lara to be competitive with him, Lara is just a good fighter, good, skilled, veteran opponent. This Castano dude, we're going to find out if there's anything to him. Because if he's going to get exposed. If he's anything less than, I'd say B-level, he's going to get exposed. We'll find out. To be honest with you guys, I don't know. You put a gun to my head and ask me who's going to win this fight. Castano and his people, why are they going up against Lara? They must think he's ready. So I favor him by decision. Lara is old, but you just never know until these guys fight. That's why they fight the fights. Also on this card, Luis Ortiz fighting German-Romanian Christian Hammer. That's going to be fun. That's going to be a fun fight, but it's pretty much going to be Luis Ortiz beating the shit out of another European dude. Also, Columbus, Ohio, there's a card that's going to be streamed on live.dbe1.com. Let me repeat that. Live, live.dbe1.com. And this card is a bunch of heavyweight prospects. A couple from New Zealand. Junior Fa, who you guys have seen before, heard of before, I'm sure, 16-0. And also Hemi Ahio, 12-0. They're both out of New Zealand. And then we got some American heavyweights. Stephen Shaw, who's a St. Louis-based heavyweight, 6'4", 10-0. And George Arias, who's out of the Bronx, of course, 12-0, are fighting on that card. So that's it for this week, guys. If everything went well on this mock pilot version of the live stream here, hopefully I'll be loading this up very, very soon. If everything goes well, we're starting live next week. So just remember, guys, and I'll talk about this on Twitter and everything, and I'll do a little preview video on YouTube beforehand, but it's going to be Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. You can get in on YouTube and chat with me. As we build out the studio and get everything going, that's going to take months, okay? That's probably like toward the end of the year, all right? We're going to get the phone thing going. And then we're going to have a full-fledged, straight-up boxing show. No boxing show right now is going to have all the things we're going to bring you guys. Some places you get the phone calls. Some places you get the podcast. Some places you get the guests. We're going to have all of it. All right, so it's coming all down the line, guys. I hope you enjoyed TNC 160. Spread the word about the show, about the channel. I'll see you at the fights. Gun show.